Hello, everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling something absolutely crucial. We're decoding the complex and, let's be honest, often messy world of workplace ethics. We're going to unpack the heavy moral choices employees face right now. We'll be looking intensely at diversity, the harsh realities of discrimination, and the massive burden of whistleblowing, all through the lens of real-world cases. So let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. Valuing workplace diversity. 2. The Equality Act 2010. 3. Defining types of discrimination. 4. Real-world discrimination examples. 5. Ethics and equal opportunity. And finally, 6. Understanding whistleblowing.
Starting off with Section 1, Valuing Workplace Diversity, the foundation of a healthy environment. Because before we can talk about where things go horribly wrong, we really need to establish the ideal baseline for a modern, thriving workplace.
So, what exactly is diversity? You know, it's a word we hear literally all the time. But it's so important we don't just treat it like another corporate buzzword. Let's look at the actual definition to prime our understanding for the rest of this explainer.
Diversity is defined as valuing the differences between people and how they contribute to a richer, creative, and productive working environment. I really want you to notice the word valuing there. It's not just a passive headcount of different people sitting in a room. It's about actively leveraging what those unique perspectives bring to your team's table.
And this respects individual differences across a massive spectrum. We're talking race, culture, gender, age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, the whole shebang. Actively valuing this means breaking our conventional expectations. Like, think about an elite athlete for a second. Who pops into your head? Our source material highlights Tani Gray-Thompson. She secured 9 gold medals in the Paralympics, broke 30 world records, and won the London Marathon 6 times. Or think about professions traditionally dominated by one gender. You've got Lisa, a female construction worker, or Peter, a male beauty therapist. True diversity actually celebrates these variations from what we just assume is expected.
And respecting all these individual differences creates a truly unified strength. When interconnected individuals stand shoulder to shoulder, all their varied backgrounds interlock to form a cohesive, fundamentally balanced, and much stronger unit.
Moving on to Section 2, the Equality Act 2010, the legal framework. Now, we shift from that ideal concept of diversity to the actual hard law that enforces it. Back on October 1st, 2010, a monumental shift happened in the UK. The Equality Act essentially took a ridiculously complex legal landscape. We're talking 116 separate pieces of legislation like the Equal Pay Act and Disability Discrimination Act, and merged them all into one powerful framework. It established 9 specific protected characteristics ranging from age and race all the way to sexual orientation and disability.
And the entire purpose of combining those laws was to advance equality of opportunity for all. It provided a robust framework to protect individual rights. And here's the thing. Every single person possesses at least a few of these protected characteristics. That means these protections apply to literally everyone, securing equal rights across the board.
Next up, Section 3, Defining types of discrimination, when workplace ideals fail. We've seen the ideal, we've seen the law. Now what happens when those frameworks completely break down? Look at this quote. Discrimination is prejudices put into action. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. It's such a profound distinction. A prejudice is just an internal thought or a bias. But discrimination, that's the moment that bias steps out into the physical world and actually causes harm to someone's life, their career, or their dignity.
Which brings us to Section 4, Real-World Discrimination Examples, Theory into Practice. Let's move from legal theory and see how this bias actually builds and manifests day to day.
We'll start with the most obvious form, which is direct discrimination. This basically occurs when person A treats person B less favorably than they treat anyone else in the exact same circumstances, specifically because of one of those protected characteristics.
To anchor this, consider this wild, real-world example from our source data. A 70-year-old woman went into a Carphone warehouse in the UK to buy a broadband contract. She was flat out refused service and told she could only register if she came back with a younger family member. No way, right? Why did that happen? Well, the company had actually provided guidance to staff not to sell contracts to customers aged 70 and over, just assuming they wouldn't understand the terms. That is a blatant, direct action of bias against the customer's age.
But, discrimination isn't always that overt.
Often, it hides in seemingly neutral policies. This is known as indirect discrimination. It happens when a requirement is applied equally to everyone across the board, but it has the hidden effect of completely excluding or severely disadvantaging one specific group.
Let's look at an example. Imagine your employer brings in a new shift pattern. On paper, it looks totally fair. Everyone has to work fewer days, but the days are much longer. However, if you have a disability that leaves you completely exhausted after working 2 long days, this new equal rule suddenly puts you at a massive disadvantage compared to everyone else. That perfectly illustrates how a rule that's fair on paper can be deeply discriminatory in reality.
Now let's consider disability discrimination. Take Amir, a 12-year-old boy with autism. When a loud fire alarm completely overwhelmed his senses, he froze. Instead of offering accommodation, he was shouted at. He panicked, and he was actually excluded from school. He was essentially punished for a direct consequence of his disability. Contrast that with perceptive discrimination, which happens based on an assumed characteristic. For instance, rejecting a job application from a white candidate because his African name leads an employer to incorrectly assume he's black. Both scenarios, while different, are rooted in profound, damaging bias.
All right, Section 5, Ethics and Equal Opportunity, Maintaining the Moral Baseline. Summarizing this up, maintaining an ethical workplace requires constant vigilance. It means ensuring fair selection, safe conditions, and absolutely equal pay for equal work, regardless of gender or background.
And finally, Section 6, Understanding Whistleblowing, the ultimate action. What happens when an organization just entirely fails to uphold these laws? This brings us to the climax of our explainer, the critical, heavy choice an employee faces when witnessing severe ethical failings from the inside. Now, what's really interesting here is how we define the whistleblower. It's someone making a public disclosure of corruption or wrongdoing. It's a profound, often risky act of raising a red flag about internal misconduct.
Formally, whistleblowing is giving information, usually to the authorities, about illegal and underhand practices. The people who do this are generally motivated by a deep sense of professional responsibility. They hold this fundamental belief that the public interest morally outweighs their loyalty to their colleagues or the company itself. They're usually triggered by discovering huge issues. Think embezzlement of funds, totally misleading data projections, literal booby traps in software code, or the terrifying knowledge of some impending doom that's going to harm society.
But here's the really big question. When is whistleblowing actually justified? Because making this choice carries immense moral weight. It carries massive professional risk, and it absolutely shouldn't be done lightly.
So, the crucial point is that before making the massive leap to go public, strict prerequisites are required. First, the motive must be an appropriate moral one. Second, you have to have exhausted all internal channels, meaning you really tried to fix it from the inside first. And third, you must possess compelling, undeniable evidence of wrongdoing with a real chance of stopping the harm.
We've explored the absolute necessity of valuing diversity, the tragedy of discrimination when those values fail, and the heavy burden placed on those who witness ultimate corporate wrongdoing. I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. It's so easy to sit here and think we'd automatically do the right thing in a vacuum, but in the real world, it's messy. If your loyalty to a colleague, or honestly your own paycheck, suddenly collides with the safety of the public, which moral choice will you make? Thanks so much for watching this explainer. I hope it's given you a lot to think about.